January 24th, 1848, began what historians describe as the most significant event during the first half of the 19th century, the California Gold Rush. Prior to 1848, California had roughly 150,000 Native Americans and perhaps 1,000 non-Native peoples. By 1850, more than 300,000 new arrivals flooded the tiny San Francisco village. The California Gold Rush triggered the largest mass migration of people in American history. John Sutter was having a sawmill built on his property along the American River, roughly 50 miles east of Sacramento. His carpenter, James Marshall, discovered gold. The two agreed to be partners, but could not keep their find a secret, and news spread fast. The soon-to-be-known 49ers began their desperate journey across the country. They faced harsh and unforgiving terrain, which took its toll in people and livestock. Many didn't make it. The favored route was the Oregon Trail. Undaunted, they kept coming. It is believed over the roughly 2 years of active mining, 10,000 wagon trains left the East Coast, heading west. If the distance, weather, and terrain weren't enough, the threat of Indian attacks was very real. On some occasions, they were able to escape, as seen here, but on many others, the fate was much worse. Many 49ers were city folk who had never camped outdoors, hunted for food, or even built a fire. The Oregon Trail passed through a narrow stretch between lava rocks known as Massacre Rocks in present-day Idaho. It was a good place for an Indian ambush. The trip was so grueling on the oxen or mules, pulling their Conestoga wagons, they were often forced to discard cherished items intended for their new homes in order to lighten the load. Here, a Sioux warrior gazes at his reflection in a mirror, probably wondering, who are these strange people who need all this useless stuff? Roughly half the gold seekers came overland from the East Coast and half by sea. It was lawless, violent, and ruled by vigilante attacks, especially against Native Americans, just to make room for the miners. It is estimated that 1 in 12 miners died, often of disease. When not working in the gold fields, miners' behavior varied, as seen here, some resting and discussing events of the fields, and others enjoying a rip-roaring drunk. To the right, you can see one actually washing his clothes and hanging them to dry. In the absence of free ladies, nighttime entertainment became raucous, loud, and often out of control. But if you were lucky enough to find a shiny little nugget, there were places to go and spend it. As quickly as miners arrived, so did very active brothels. It is estimated that roughly $2 billion worth of gold was found. Only a small percentage of the miners got rich. However, the merchants who emerged to supply needed goods did get rich, with prices like $25 for one egg and a pair of boots, $2,500 in today's money. Many famous entrepreneurs got their start in the gold fields. Levi Strauss, Henry Wells, and his partner, William Fargo, to name two. The saga of the 49ers certainly provided the subject for scores of artists to depict, as seen in this ambitious example. The artist and illustrator, Dean Cornwell, was a major force during the first half of the 20th century, often called the Golden Age of illustration. He was commissioned to paint a depiction of the 49ers on the centennial celebration of the event. Cornwell was meticulous in his process and completed numerous detailed studies prior to the finished piece. Here is the finished piece, and it makes for an interesting side-by-side comparison. Although the 1849 California Gold Rush gets most of the historical attention and awareness, there were several others, including in Bozeman, Montana in 1862. These gold fields had all the elements of the 49er mining camps, but they had a lot more trouble with Indian attacks than in California. This extraordinary work is entitled Advice on the Prairie and pictures a savvy, experienced guide explaining to a settler family what dangers they're likely to encounter along the Bozeman Trail, especially if they fall behind. The wagon trains often consisted of as many as 450 wagons, traveling the Bozeman cutoff to reach the gold fields. They encountered many hardships, including the remnants of those who didn't make it. They often dealt with hardships, and they had to rely on the skill and experience of the guides, like the Bozeman Scout. Colorado-born sculptor Barry Eisenach grew up in a small town. A trip to Paris and several hours sitting in awe, studying the work of Auguste Rodin, turned his focus to sculpting. His figural pieces are not action figures of warriors and such. In his own words, he prefers, quote, to capture intelligence, a piece of spirit, an effort to steal a bit of soul. If stealing a bit of soul is the same as attitude, he really got it in this bronze. The hat, long hair, reverse pistols, stance with the Winchester casually resting on his shoulder, and the woolly chaps. It's a whole look. Hollywood casting could not surpass this Bozeman Scout. It seems appropriate to close the Gold Rush on a happy note, and what could be happier than discovering gold? Without the bad guys, settling the West would be more like moving into a senior citizen facility. Episode number 8 is entitled Outlaw and introduces many colorful and outrageous characters. Don't miss it.